We're discussing the Israel's redemption. We saw the redemption is the bringing of our collective national soul to its full expression. What is the content of that national soul? It's called the Nishmat Yisrael, Knesset Yisrael, the Shekhinah, the divine ideal for all of creation, that goal for which God created the world to bring about this blessing, goodness, to bestow good upon all. And we saw that that neshama, that collective soul, our life soul, can come to expression only when the Jews are in the land of Israel. There's a certain geographical location, okay, say that enables that life to come to expression, which are the connection of the Jewish people and the land of Israel. One without the other is not alive. We saw one side of the coin, the land without the people. What happens to the land? Right? We saw the land becomes desolate, doesn't give signs of life. The land, all of a sudden, a productive, fruitful land becomes desolate. And we saw pictures, and we saw it historically. So too, that's how it was. When the Jews were here, it was full, it developed, and then agricultural fruitfulness, produce, and then we left. The land became desolate. Now we're coming back, Baruch Hashem, and that was the sign of redemption. Right? We saw the Rabbi say the sign of redemption, when you see the land giving its fruits again, that's the sign of redemption, because it won't give its fruits to anyone else. It doesn't show sign, it's not alive when anyone else occupies it. On the other side of the coin we began, what's the significance of the Jewish people when they're outside the land? We said they're also not alive. So we began this source already, how we saw Yechezkel 37, the dry bones prophecy, how the Jews outside the land, they're likened to a body in the grave. No signs of life. Again, individuals are alive and kicking all over the world, Jews throughout the exile. But as a nation, the vitality of a nation, and that's what expresses, again, the full content of this divine ideal, this divine good for all. When we have these four institutions, we called it, the prophecy, the Jewish court, the Sanhedrin, the temple, and the Jewish kingdom, those are that which enables this conduit, that's the vehicle that expresses goodness and then truth and justice for all. Right? To fulfill all the prophecies, Yeshayahu 20, chapter 2, right? The nations will come up and the word of God from Yerushalayim, and then you'll beat your swords into plowshares. A new man, a new mankind, the orientation, the aspirations of goodness, of giving, not how to kill and destroy others, God forbid, but how to be good, realizing that we're all one. We're all connected. L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, right? Our prayer is to fix the world under God's kingdom, to link this world up to something much greater, to the divine, to the source of life, the source of infinite blessing. When the Jews outside the land, that name of God, that ideal cannot be revealed. We saw in Yechezkel 36, the prophecy before this, how exile is considered a desecration of his name. His name cannot come to expression. Not that God is desecrated, but his name is how he's revealed, how that goal is expressed and fulfilled in actuality in this world. That name is desecrated. That name cannot come fulfilled. When the Jews are outside the land, then his name, that's what's at stake. It's not some personal, even national benefit for us that we like to feel safer or better in the land of Israel. This is what enables that blessing of creation to be fulfilled. So we saw Yechezkel, the 37, and we saw the Malbim commentary explains that prophecy, how the Jews in the exile are likened to be in the graves, right? It says there in the prophecy explicit, I'll open up your graves and bring you back to the land of Israel. So he said the graves, the collective grave of a nation, a dead nation. The nation cannot be alive on its outside. Scattered bones, yes, dry bones. But they have to come back to the land of Israel, and then they can rise up, as the prophecy. We saw the Malbim, also the Vilna Gaon on the left, this other source, how going out to Chutzars is going into the graveyard. The soul leaves us. As if you have the body, it's complete. So what's missing? But without the soul of life, that which comes through the body and gives it meaning and to fulfill itself and to reveal itself in fullness and vitality. Outside the land of Israel, the Jews, that's the graveyard. The collective graveyard, the neshama, the spiritual life, this goodness, this holiness that comes to this world to illuminate this world, to elevate all of mankind, all of existence. That is what's at stake. And then we saw this very central source that summarized it all, so to speak, in the middle source from the Zohar, how, I'll just read it quick to you in English, that this divine ideal and the Knesset Yisrael, again, the in the Kabbalistic terms of the divine ideal, let's call it, and the receptacle of that ideal, the Knesset Israel, the soul of the Jewish people, they are one. And they're not called one when they're separate. One without the other is not called one. So we described it, we understood that it's not called one. God is always one. But his name is not one. It's not revealed. He's not called, right? The king with no constituents is not called the king. In other words, the calling of his name, right? We said, Adon Olam Hashem Allah Paterem Kol, that he's always king. He's always created before the world. But when he created the world, now he's called.
He's proclaimed?
Right. Nikra Echad. What we say, Adon Olam. Then he's called what? Right? Proclaimed, called. In other words, now he's revealed as that oneness, that goodness is now as an expression in this world. Not a theoretical potential, but now it becomes a reality. So one without the other, as if God's name, this ideal, without the Jewish people, is not one. And now come and see, we saw, again, I'm just reading the words, that now that the nation of Israel is in exile, it's as if he's not called one. So up to now it was the Jewish people, that God has this receptacle of his conduit, of his name in this world, his goal in this world through the Jewish people. But now it says when they're in exile, now we're entering another geographical location, another factor of this equation, that the Jews in the land of Israel, that is what enables this conductivity of divinity, of goodness, of blessing to the world. Come and see. Now the Jews are in exile, it's if he's not called one. That oneness is not coming to expression. And when is he called one? B'shash Yisrael, when the Jews leave the exile and come back to Eretz Yisrael, they return to unify, to rejoin, link up with the divine. And that's why it says, Bayomu yesh Shem echad u'shmo echad. And that day will be fulfilled what? When the Jews come back to the land, then it'll be fulfilled, that verse we say every day at the end of Valenu L'Shabech, and the very prayer for the verse from Zechariah 14. And that day, God will be one, his name will be one. That's what's at stake here. The oneness of God. Again, the Gemara says God is always one. What do you mean in that day God will be one? But that his name will be one. That'll be revealed. It says Hashem echad u'shmo echad. The Yud Kei Vav Kei and his name. So I would call it in maybe simple terms, we said, call it the ideal and the real will become one and the same. The ideal becomes the reality fulfills that transcending divine ideal is now realized and comes to fulfillment in our world. When is that? When the Jews come back to Israel. So all those, when you have that, when you pray every day and say that verse, and remember, this is dependent on the Jewish people and of Israel. That's the receptacle. The Jewish people and of Israel, I mentioned my metaphor of the two pieces of metal that conduct. Right? You have superconductors that can lift up trains, whatever. The superconductor, the Jewish people in the land of Israel, that conducts divine energy, divine life, divine good blessing to all. And then the rabbis go on, we mentioned this, we saw just quickly for those that weren't here. And when are they considered one in the actual world? Now, so we said the Jewish people and the spiritual unity with God, but what does that mean in the practical down to earth, so to speak? When are they called one? So he says in Eretz Yisrael, especially Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael, they are called one. And that's why it says in the verse, Goy Echad, Mikam Chaisel Goy Echad. Who is like your nation, one in the land? Right, we say in Mincha and Shabbat, the verse in Shmuel, also Divrei Yamim. The verse, who is like your nation, one in the land? The rabbis say, certainly in the land they are one, and not when they're outside of it. Because otherwise, it should have just said, who is like your nation, one? The Jewish people are one. They are this vehicle that receive and express your unity. What does that unity mean? To show that that everything is connected to Hashem, to this ideal. It's not some spiritual ideal that you have to, leave this world and the physical aspect of creation is abandoned to become holy, to be attached to God. But the oneness of God that permeates all. The oneness means there's nothing outside of. It's not just a quantity, one as opposed to three, but the one is that the source of all, the connection of all, that all is uplifted, all is connected. And we said the minimum unit that expresses the allness of life is a nation that has government, army, politics, agriculture, economy, so everything, and all of that living to, attached to, revealing, expressing that goodness, holiness, truth, justice in this world. To be a kingdom, that's what it says. Our goal is to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. In Shemot chapter 19, right before the Ten Commandments were given, this week, this Parashat Yitro, chapter 19, verse 6, I think. You are to, before you give the Ten Commandments, what is the goal? What is the ideal? Where are you headed? You are to be unto me a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a holy nation. Because that's what, again, the receptacle of unity, of God's unity, this totality of all the white light that all is revealed in a nation that is contains all, that has all aspects. Individual can't do everything, can't be expression of allness, as the Maharal and also the Meshech Chochma writes, Rav Meir Simcha Dvinsk. God is an individual. God does not reveal his name, express his name, cannot be revealed on the individual level. Because individual, is finite, is mortal, is also individual, not the whole. The whole, the unit, is this nation. For that, God created a nation that will express that one, to be receptacle of that one. And from there, it branches off to all of the world, all of mankind, all of existence, uplifting even the animal kingdom, right? In the Yeshayahu chapter 11, that the lamb living in the wolf, whatever. A change in nature, of sophistication of nature, elevation of what it's supposed to be, the true nature of the world, to be one, to work together, harmony, like this beautiful orchestra, symphony orchestra, that all the different parts working together, not one as opposed to the other. You're right, there's different parts, and there's different functions, and there's different levels. They're not all the same. It's not, identical, but there's unity. Unity doesn't mean everyone's the same. We're all created equal. They're not all created equal, but everyone has a job, and everyone is important. Everyone participates to make this totality. But the conductor of that orchestra, God created a conductor, so to speak, also conductor, different meaning, right? The conductor of the orchestra, that that unifies and connects and reveals the one, the connectivity of all of them, the harmony of all. So that's what it says here, that the Jewish people are this one. So it should have said, who is like your nation one that expresses your name? So why does it say, Mikam Chaysel Goy Echad Ba'aretz? Why does it, read the words here, right? It should have been enough to say, Goy Echad. The one, Jewish people are this one. They're this conductor. Lama Katu, so why does it say, Mikam Chaysel Goy Echad Ba'aretz, in the land? To tell you, Shelo Nikru Echad, but they're not called one except in the land. Connected to this land, praiseworthy, Ashrei Chelkam, so luckily a portion, how do you say, praiseworthy is the privileged, so to speak, I don't know, privilege, it's more, praise is the portion of Israel that has this goal. It's also an obligation. It's not just a privilege that we're the conductor of all this. It's a great obligation, responsibility. And we have to live up to that. That's what we're working on, to come back to in the stages of redemption. We're coming back to be that conductor, to be that kingdom of priests and holiness. What are the priests? The priests that give the guidance to others, the holy kingdom of priests that will give guidance to all, direction to all, to bring out the good of all, to show everyone that they're all part of this divine creation. But where is that? How can we fulfill that goal? Not by good Jews all over in New York and saying the name of God. That's not the vehicle. That's very nice. That's on the local scene, so to speak, that it has this influence in what you see. But here there's a different transcendental, in other words, influence, the radiation of the Jewish people, land of Israel. That is this conduit. That is this divinely created entity. The land of Israel created with the quality that, when together with the land of Israel, enables this releasing of this divine energy that's inside the collective soul. And that's what we saw, even on practical levels. When the Jews are outside the land is all of a sudden, what happened to the land? Just dries up. The Jewish people outside the land, that's what we'll see. We saw they become like dry bones, individuals, but not as a nation, not as a vitality, not prophecy. There were people here that were living here 2,000 years. The land was dead. Outside the land, there was no prophecy. The nations didn't produce any prophets. When we're coming back, we're going to turn to that full blessing of goodness, of connection to Hashem, ultimately prophecy and beyond, levels that are so astounding, which would, again, will bring such a good to the world. So again, we saw up till now, that was just a quick overview of this special source here, I think, because it summarizes it all, how the Jewish people are this vehicle, so to speak, the soul of the Jewish people, that's the life force that comes to expression when and only when we're in the land of Israel. So up till now, one might think that that's like metaphysics and spiritual and transcending spiritual souls of the Shekhinah, the divine presence revealed to the Jewish people, land of Israel. But as we know in Torah, there are two sides, you could call it. There's the spiritual side, the soul, the ideals, and the practice, the do's and don'ts, the halakha. The halakha is not something separate. It's some just dry rituals we do. They have meaning, they have value, they release, they activate very strong reality. The book Nefesh HaChaim by the student of the Vilna Gaon, Rav Chaim Volozhin, there he reveals and elaborates on we call it the cosmic, universal influence of the Torah and the mitzvot. They're not just rituals you get, God says you do this and I'll give you a reward. They are the actual I don't know, doings in this world, the physical, that open up the valve, so to speak. When you open up this faucet, that enables higher things. So you're just opening up a tiny faucet, but that opens up valves that are above, that are beyond what you see. Like we mentioned, my story of the child that goes into the, I don't know, the Pentagon or whatever, and there's a little button there, and they say, stay away from that button, whatever, right? And he's so attracted. Everyone says to go away, and it seems to be so tempting. So he pushes a little button, and everyone is so excited. What did I do? What did I do so wrong? I just pushed a button a few millimeters. Yeah, but that button sends off intercontinental ballistic missiles in the whole world. A little button here. We do certain actions that seem insignificant, and that's why Christianity said, what are you guys dealing with such meticulous details here and that, and then lighting a match on Shabbat? We want to just do good and charity and then being nice, have a good heart. But there is actions in this world that manifest that infinite blessing of goodness to change man, to make man really good. There are these forces, these actions. And like I said, the Nefesh HaChaim elaborates on the three aspects of the three levels of the actions, speech, and thought. He parallels it to the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, these three levels of the soul. How they affect, they're connected to, call it, not strings, it's not a physical, but again, they're not buttons, it's also this gross metaphor, but literally they activate energy releasing things in the world, and the Kabbalah deals with the specifics of how each mitzvah does, what it affects, how it affects different worlds, different levels. But it literally advances the world towards the betterment, right? We all want a better world. Anyone here wants to make the world better? Taken olam. Oh. So if we saw what these mitzvot, what these little actions, so to speak, these little buttons, again, this is a metaphor, then, how God created and enabled us, the portion of Israel. That's what we say in the prayers before the Psukkah de Zimra, right? Ashreinu ma tov chelkenu, ma neim goralenu. If we know how how pleasurable is our portion, that we have these means that enable literally to advance the world, to better the world. Tikkun olam. Not in talking, not theory, but literally to change man. Like I said, you can put on the walls of the UN, copy the verse from Yeshayahu, to beat your swords into plowshares. But the world is so full of hatred and jealousy and corruption and evil and war. How to get rid of that man becomes better, not just write on the wall, to write in the walls of the hearts of man. That is what the Torah, the mitzvot, Am Yisrael is and will, and even more when we're back in the land fully, in the Beit HaMikdash and the prophecy, that will energize the world, that literally there'll be no possibility of hurting other people. Like we mentioned the Gemara in Yerushalmi in the Darim, that the right hand slips and cuts the left hand. Will the left hand now rise up to avenge the right hand? It's one body, one thing. What do you mean? We're one unit, but that's not so clear, because the body is anesthetized. So the right hand that doesn't feel the pain of the left, it feels like, no, I'm going to get back at him. But that's not normal. The normal situation is the world is one. The source of it, we're all connected to the divine. They're all creations of the divine, the oneness of all. And that's what Am Yisrael goes to expose, to pick up the curtain from the world. That's why the world, from the root of olam. What's the root? Olam, he'elem, concealed, hidden. We don't see that oneness. You don't see the divine. You don't see any, what do you mean? He's him and I can hit him. I don't feel the pain and he deserves it, all competition and jealousy. But it's ridiculous. You're all this one beautiful orchestra, like I said, with every part needed and necessary. You need him and he needs you, and all together make up this expression of what beautiful music the world will produce. And for that, God created the vehicle that exposes, that lifts the curtain and reveals that unity, that inner hidden unity of the world. It doesn't create it. It just exposes what's there, what's really there. And that's the nation of Israel and the land of Israel. That's why we're sacrificed. That's what we're going out to. We're unfortunately defending and have to defend. Second, then to endanger lives of soldiers, to defend that, to bring about, to enable that goal for the benefit of the world. If our enemies knew what they were doing to hold up the blessing for them, that's what it says in the Midrash, that if the nations, the Romans or the Greeks, if they knew what the temple was to them, not only were they not destroyed, they would have put up their legions to protect it. How the Beit HaMikdash is this force that enables this energy and life, this positive vibes to come and bring the world to its perfection. But that's not so clear yet. The world doesn't know that yet. So we still have the necessity to defend again. But what is motivation? Our motivation isn't to conquer, to kill, just to butcher and to get rid of other people. But in order to defend this ideal of goodness, the blessing for all, in spite of them, those that are coming against us to try to hurt their own blessing, we should say, so heck with you. We don't even let them do that. We want to bring out that good to benefit them, to benefit all creation. So we said so that's the halacha, is the do's and don'ts, so to speak. The Shulchan Aruch tells you what to do, how to do, when you get up in the morning, exactly everything. But that's how to align the life to the divine, how to connect all the branches of existence, even down to the physical, down to the fingernails. How to align everything to infuse it with infinite goodness and holiness and how do you say, justice and truth. But behind that, in other words, what's coming through those actions is what's called the deeper side of Torah, the soul of Torah, the wine of Torah, there's the bread of Torah. The rabbis talk about there's the body of Torah, but there's the soul. What comes through? What is the meaning? And that's very important to know, that it's not some dry rituals. And that's what the rabbis forewarned us, that if Judaism unfortunately becomes just do this and don't do that, it just seems limiting and suffocating. And like other religions that they tell man what to do, and so there's a wave of growing up. It becomes that. Also the prophets talk about it. The Yeshayahu of mitzvot anashim ulumada becomes ritual, just doing it out of habit, without the meaning, without the beauty, without understanding. So there's times that you don't need to. The child doesn't know. He just does, and he accepts, and that's for his level. When he grows up, all of a sudden he says, "Why? What am I doing?" And then Rav Kook elaborates on it. We spoke how Mamarador, the spiritual diagnosis of the generation that's leaving religion, that's leaving it en masse, because they're looking for more, they're ready for more, they're demanding, I want to make the world better, and you told me don't mix your meat and milk spoons. This is ridiculous. It's all archaic. We want to be a better world. Communism, socialism, ism, some, again, man-made attempts to better the world, which is good, the attempt, the desire, because that's proper. Man reaches the point that now he's not satisfied with just do and don't ask. For the child, like I said, that was enough. He couldn't understand many more. And you teach him mathematics on the level, arithmetic for the third grade level, but he's supposed to grow and develop. Unfortunately, the Torah was just keep doing this. The person goes up, and now he's into trigonometry, calculus, and whatever, quantum mechanics, and he's still with God. Oh, that's this guy with a white beard that if you don't listen to him, he'll beat you, you'll burn or whatever. So they grows up, the child, and rejects. It's no wonder, because it's not fitting anymore. Now he has to, and he's supposed to get to the point of understanding, not to do mitzvot out of rote. God doesn't want his robots. The doing is important. Like I said, the doing is the exact function that enables this goodness, this blessing to come to the world. But to do it with your heart, to understand the beauty. And you're supposed to grow up and understanding. So that's the other aspect of Torah that was neglected. Yes, you're right. In the exile, it wasn't so necessary. We weren't so much ready for it. But now the demand is, the time of the redemption is when it's a necessity. Not just to convince it to be religious. In other words, but to understand, because now the point of, like the adult, to understand the adult level of the grandeur of Torah. It says in Divrei Yamim, Da'at Elokei Avicha v'avdeu. Know your God and serve him. Not just to serve him, we just want robots. The main thing is you should do what you're supposed to, just be quiet. No. Know your God. The knowledge of God. That's what it says in Yeshayahu again, chapter 11 there, with the Mashiach. The future time. I put it on quiet. How can that be? I put it on. The knowledge of God will fill the earth. The grandeur of what we're dealing with. The luck, like I said, how lucky we are. Ashreinu ma tov chelkenu. How lucky we are, the privilege to have this portion in God, to be part of this ability to connect and change the world, to elevate the world. Without that, you just do's and don'ts. How can you be happy? The best we can do it, the rabbis talk about the yirata onesh, fear of punishment. Do this or else. So they believe and they do, and they believe in God, and he can punish, he reward and punishment, so I'll do it for the sake of reward, or I'll avoid sinning for the sake of avoiding the punishment. We mentioned the Rambam, right, the laws of Tshuva, chapter 10, how that's the beginning level for children, but you're not supposed to set that level. The love of God, and the love of God, he says, depends on your knowledge of God. You love according to the knowledge, how beautiful, how grand, what we're part of, how, like I said, how lucky we are to be part of this amazing system, ability to participate in this divine plan of goodness. Without understanding that, just the do's and don'ts, you can get the best, like I said, to this fear, out of fear of what'll be with me in my future, I don't know, again, people who believe the future reward and Gehenom or the world to come. But we mentioned that, right, in chapter 19, in the Path of the Just, and other sources, how that sort of worship is far from the ideal. but to be an idealist, to want to do good for the sake of good, like the Rambam says. And that's why we have a generation that wants to, is willing, but doesn't understand what's that got to do with mitzvot, with the little minutiae of. So that's where comes in the wisdom of Torah that we have. It's not like it's something new. The deeper wisdom of Torah, the inner workings of Torah, the levels and levels of the Kabbalah, the deeper secrets of Torah, what's behind, what's revealed through these details. So again, on our topic, so we saw, you could say this is mystical, the Jewish people, they're connected to their soul is released and revealed in this divine goal when the Jews in the land of Israel. That outside of which it's like being in the graveyard. But here I want to show you halachic, the extension down to the practice of where it's revealed, where this is expressed, this content. The Jews outside the land are not a nation, are not the living entity of godliness. So where do we see that in halakha? In other words, how is the Jewish nation is defined? In halakha, here we saw you're not a nation outside the land. In the land, you're one, and you release and reveal what? God's oneness, what I call the divine ideal for all of creation. But where do we see in halakha this idea? So look in the bottom source you have on the sheet. What defines the Jewish people? The Jews in the world, all the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. What is the halachic definition of the nation? So there's a law. Actually, maybe I should have given the Tanakh, but I'll just tell you. In the beginning of Vayikra, there is a sacrifice called the Par Helem Davar. In chapter 4, verse 13, it says, I'll just read it to you quickly. Is this chapter 4? When certain sins, if the how do you say, the president sins, if an individual sins, why isn't it here? But there's a sin offering here. It's called, if the whole congregation of Israel sins through ignorance, by mistake, and the thing be hidden from the eyes of the assembly. We'll see who that is. And they have done something against what the commandments of the Torah. Then they bring this young bullock for the sin and bring him before the Kaplan. In other words, this offering called Par Helem Davar, the thing that was from the hidden matter. What's this hidden matter? Simply put, if the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court, makes a ruling, people ask a certain law, you're allowed to do, new cases that come up, an elevator on Shabbat, certain law that and the rabbis, the Sanhedrin says, yes, this is permissible. And the Jews do accordingly. It's permissible, so they do so. And it turns out the Sanhedrin says, we made a mistake. It was hidden from the eyes. They made a mistake, which is also, you should know that Judaism doesn't hide from that even rabbis can make mistakes. There's a whole tractate, as you'll see, this is taken from, Tractate Horayot, of the laws, that there's all the different laws when the Sanhedrin makes a mistake. But they recognize the mistake, and now they say, no, it's forbidden. But meanwhile, all these Jews did something, on Shabbat that was forbidden. What happens? What do you bring? What offering is brought when you do an accidental sin on Shabbat? Korban Chatat. There's a sin offering that, again, these offerings at Karov, right, from the word Korban, not just a sacrifice, not a good translation. It's from the root of Lekarev, to get closer, to return, to get closer to Hashem, to bring about the returning this closeness and proximity and connectivity to the divine, to link up, to plug into the divine. So there's a sacrifice. Every individual, if you do something by mistake, you didn't know the laws, or you didn't know it was Shabbat, then there's a sacrifice, Korban Chatat. So let's say all the people did this mistake. There's 500,000 people made this mistake. So 500,000 people bring all these 500,000 offerings of this part. But there's a law that if the whole nation makes a mistake by accident, based on this errant ruling, then you bring one sacrifice. The Beit Din, the Sanhedrin, they bring the sacrifice, not 500,000. 500,000 people did this accidental, what's the word accidental? The opposite of purposeful, but with unintentional sin, because they thought it was allowed, that they thought it was, that's what unintentional means. You thought you were allowed, you didn't know, and now you found out. So you bring a Korban Chatat. Here, only one is brought. When the whole nation makes a sin, this accidental, this unintentional sin, then it's called Par Helem Davar, the cow, from the hidden matter. The hidden matter, the Sanhedrin didn't know the law, they made this mistake, and now it's revealed. And now this offering. The question is, what does it mean, the whole nation? It says here the whole nation, the whole assembly. Kol kahal. Who's the kahal? You take, again, there's 20 million Jews in the world. 10 million and one is the majority, 51%. Again, doesn't mean all. So that's the majority. So who's the majority of the nation? If there's 20 million Jews in the world, so 10 million is the majority, 10 million and one? Or what makes the majority? So here you have the laws. You have it in English. You have it in English. So just to make things quicker, the bottom, Horayot. This is from the tractate, right? The Talmud Bavli, Horayot, page 3a. Ravasi. In the case of an erroneous ruling of a court, right? The case of this, when the court made the wrong thing and the people went accordingly, you go by the majority of the inhabitants of the land of Israel. They are to be taken into account. Why? Where do they learn it out from? It says in Malachim, Kings 1, chapter 8, that Shlomo, when he built the temple, he made a party. So Shlomo held the feast at that time, and all of Israel, the verse says, Kol HaKahal, Imo Kahal Gadol, the whole community was with him, a great congregation. It says Kol Yisrael, like the Hebrew, Kol Yisrael Imo Kahal Gadol, the whole nation, a big community, the big congregation. What? From the entrance of Hamat to the Nile, to the brook of Egypt, Nile River, maybe. In other words, these borders of Israel, the northern border, and the southern border. So the Gemara asks, I'll go on. They made this celebration before the Lord our God, 7 days and 7 days, 14 days. When was that? When did that come out?
Dedication to the temple. Dedicating the temple.
Okay, but when was that? What part of the year? These 14 days they celebrated. In Tishrei. It was Yom Kippur. It was in like till Sukkot. No, they were feasting and as opposed to fasting on Yom Kippur. And the Gemara asked, how can they do? There was some unbelievable festivity of joy, and it said it was okay that they did so. In other words, the festivity for 14 days, including, again, from the beginning of Tishrei till after Yom Kippur included. So the Gemara asks, though, it is written, and all of Israel was with him, a great congregation. So what need was there for saying from the northern border to the southern border? In other words, just tell me the whole nation was with him. What's the need for the designating the borders? But rather, the Gemara says, from this it can be conferred, we learn out that only these, though in Hebrew, who dikri kahal? These are the ones that are called the kahal, the nation, and not those outside of it. Within these borders, that's what defines the nation of Israel. Not that there's no Jews outside the land. There are also Jews are good people. Here, what is defining the nation? And we said, getting back to the inner workings, the nation, that's the vehicle that expresses God's name in the world, the big name of God, right? Yechezkel 36, that the exile is the desecration of my big name, my holy name. Every individual does a mitzvah, it's a sanctification of his name, brings a little light to the world. But we saw in Yechezkel, right? Being in the exile constitutes a desecration of my holy name, my big name, and therefore I'm bringing you back to the land, right? For the sake of my big name. The big name is the total ideal for creation, not an individual Jew doing a mitzvah. The Gemara in Brachot, page 8a, in the Talmud Bavli. Since the Jews are exiled, the temple is destroyed, God only has his 4 cubits of halakha. The 4 cubits, individual domain, the private level of, right, you're allowed to carry on Shabbat 4, because that's your private domain. God's name is now limited to the individual, your kitchen, Shabbat, the Beit Midrash. But the name of God, this ideal that is revealed to all of creation, like again, industry, commerce, nation, government, the allness of God, the oneness of God, this totality of God's ideal, the white light, not little pieces of parts of the spectrum, little colors, but the total name, that's when the Jews are land of Israel. So here we're talking about what is the nation? Who is the nation that expresses that? But here halachically, we have to know and that's for the law of the Par Halem Davar. We have to know who the nation is. Because if it's not the whole nation, or not the majority, then each one has to bring the sacrifice. But if we make this mistake, like I said, 500,000 sacrifices. So doing one or the 500,000? So if, let's say we have 20 million Jews in the world and 100,000, just for numbers, I don't know, let's say 1 million Jews here. So is 10 million the majority? And then if only 100,000 or 500,000 did this sin, then each one has to bring their own. Or the majority goes by the land of Israel. Since there's 1 million here, 500,001 is the majority. And then one sacrifice is brought, the Par Halem Davar, this special sacrifice, and not 500,000 individual sacrifices. But again, like I said, the big difference is the spiritual entity of when we're a nation being one, we're bringing down God's oneness in the world. But nevertheless, this halachic expression of this, of what defines the nation, even this halakha, this dry law, so to speak, of what defines the nation. So here the law is, the Jewish people are defined, again, as a nation. For this halakha, the kahal is Hanihu Dikra Kahal. Those are the ones that are called the kahal. Because what does the verse have to say? All the Jews are with him. We know all the Jews means everyone. No, it's the Jews from here to there, exactly the borders of Israel. Those are, the Gemara says, those are the Jews, not the Jews, those are the kahal, the nation. Aval Hanach, the others outside of it, are not called kahal. Let's, one more sheet quickly if we can. The Rambam brings this law in what you have on the right, upper right corner. The Rambam, in his section of the laws on korbanot, sacrifices, the laws of shkagot, the laws of these accidental sins, and when would you have to bring korban shkaga, or korban chatat in this case. So he brings down, everyone has a sheet on the right, in chapter 13. I have it in English, actually. No, sorry, in the middle there to the English, on the right. If the Sanhedrin themselves acted in accordance with their own ruling, they may not be included together to make up a majority. In other words, if you want to know the majority, you don't count the Sanhedrin themselves. They went by their own ruling, but it's by the Jews outside. And the majority is accounted majority only if they who acted in error were a majority apart from the Sanhedrin. But here, if the majority of the people of the land of Israel acted on the authority of the court, and it turned out to be a mistaken thing, and it was a sin, turns out to be. Even if they so acted, here he gives two possibilities. What is called a majority. Even if they who so acted were but a single tribe. In other words, or if the majority of the tribes so acted, even if they were only a minority of the congregation. In other words, there's two types of majority. There's a numerical majority, like the 51%, even if it's only one tribe. One tribe was so big that it was the majority, or it was more than half the nation of Israel, in Israel. Or 7 tribes out of the 12, even if they're not the majority. You have 7 small tribes. If you have 1 million Jews and these 7 tribes are already 500,000 in one, then that's the majority. So there's tribal majority or numerical. But again, it goes by the people in the land of Israel. Then the court is liable. They bring one sacrifice, and they who acted on their authority are exempt. Thus, he gives the example. If the inhabitants of the land of Israel were 600,001, and they who acted in accordance with the ruling of the court were 300,001, so you have a numerical majority, the usual majority we call, and they were all members of the tribe of Judah. Like it's only one tribe. It's not a majority of the tribes, but it's a majority of the people. Or, if they who acted were all of the members of 7 tribes, even though they're only 100,000, that's not a numerical majority out of 600,000, 1/6. But nevertheless, they're 7 out of 12. That's also like a tribal majority. He says, though, the Rambam, where it's underlined, no regard is paid to those who, again in Hebrew, it's different. But no, you don't take it into account. It's more I would translate. Ein mashgichim al yutshei chutzla. You don't take into account, or English here, no regard is paid to those who dwell outside the land, since only inhabitants of the land of Israel are called a congregation. That's the nation. So for this law, so far, what applies to this part of the Devar, to know who the nation is, individual Jews, again, rabbis, scholars, good people, holy people outside the land. But the nation is defined by those in the land of Israel. Based on, again, this is the halakha we just saw from the Gemara in Horayot. Maybe one last source, or maybe we have time for one more.
You have a question, Ida?
Yes.
Could I ask a question?
Sure, of course you can.
In a shir, we were reading through Shmuel Aleph, and we got to Perek Kaf Vav Suk Yud Tet, talking about. I think the Gemara here goes on to say that those living outside the land, it's as if they're worshiping other gods.
We'll get to that. That's our next topic.
Okay.
We have sheets on that to explain what that means, but that's a very strong statement, and we want to explain that. But that's what follows because of this source, exactly what your logic, because this understanding of the nation, the land of Israel, we'll see the extension, and the almost natural, once you understand this, you understand the natural extension to what you just quoted, the rabbis will talk about. But that I want to see, we have, again, that's the next topic with the sheets and the sources, and where that's written and what's written, and what it means.
Which is irrational.
But it's again, you're right. It's because that's why this order. You believe it or not, there's an order to what we're trying to do here. These classes. That if you understand that the nation of Israel brings down God's oneness, so you understand the other side of the coin. Outside of the land of Israel is this antithesis or the lack of expressing God's oneness, and any lack of oneness is like idol worshiping. Is like not connecting to that one, the source of one, not expressing His oneness. Not that you believe in other gods, you're bowing down to other gods. You're a good Jew, holy Jew. But now we have to understand what that source is. But yes, the rabbis say, and we'll see the Gemara, the sources, Ketuvot, how those that live outside the land is very strong things. But again, we have to understand what that means. But based on what we're learning here, it's more understandable because it's not an individual distinction. Because you don't have that vehicle of godliness, of oneness, of serving God in a direct form. But that I want to keep it for when we... That's what we're getting to. You'll see it's very strong sources. But based on understanding this, you'll see how clear it is and how... But the opposite, the main thing is understanding, therefore, the positive side, what it means to be an island of Israel. What is revealed, what is expressed, not just good for you, it's nice to you, it's fun, it's even security, defense, we can defend ourselves. What does it mean for the world? What the cosmological, the universal, the effects of... If anyone understood that, you would take the first plane or run and fly to Eretz Yisrael. The problem is we don't see it. We get so used to living outside the land that there's nothing an Orthodox Jew needs that isn't here. They think they have everything. Because we have only the individual level. We have the 4 cubits. Shabbat, Kashrut. No, what's the difference? New York, Israel. I can keep putting fill in here. It's the same thing. So we'll see it's not the same thing. A different dimension, different reality, objectively. But that we have to get to, we'll build up. B'ezrat Hashem. So either pass back the sheets, we'll continue next week and keep them, or bring them back.